He said he always loved getting invited over to their house because he knew the food was going to be awesome, especially the hummus. They made homemade hummus, and he said it's the best hummus you've ever had. And so he tells a story about one time when he was over at their house, and after dinner, the mother began to share, and they had 2 sons that were both grown, and they had married and had families. But both of her Armenian sons had married non-Armenian women, which was a little uncommon in this culture. And she said how much she loves her daughters-in-law and the families they've created, and she's so thankful for them. But she said part of her had this grief. Because when her kids were little, she had worked so hard to kind of infuse this culture into them. She taught them the story and the struggle. She spent time teaching them the language and how to speak it and read it and write it. She taught them recipes and family stories. But now in their adult life, they weren't really doing any of those things. They didn't speak the language, read or write it. They weren't teaching it to their kids. In fact, sometimes they even bought hummus from the store. And as she was sharing this processing, this grief, whatever you want to call it, she said, it was like one day I woke up and I realized that my kids weren't just Armenians who happened to live in Southern California, but they were Southern Californians who would eat hummus with dinner. As I think about my life, as I think about Laura and I and raising our kids and trying to form them in the way of Jesus. See, one of my concerns when you look at the cultural pulls of our world, one of my fears is that one day I would wake up and I would look at my kids and realize that they aren't Christians who just happen to live in Flint. They aren't Christians who just happen to live in America, but that they're Americans who just go to church sometimes. And see, I think that is Paul's concern here. Paul is saying, don't forget what or who you belong to. And so when he says this verse, or this sentence in verse 27, go back one more. If he says this verse in verse 27 where he says, most importantly, live together in a manner worthy of Christ's gospel. What he's really saying here is live together, live out your citizenship, not as a Roman citizen, not that that's irrelevant, but live as someone who lives in the Roman colony of Philippi, but live as a citizen of God's kingdom. Live as a citizen of God's kingdom. I can almost imagine Paul asking them the question, hey, if someone watched your life for a week, what kingdom would they say you belong to? It's a question I've been reflecting on in my own life this week. If people watched me for a week, what kingdom would they say I belong to? Would it be the kingdom of materialism, of busyness, the kingdom of individualism, the kingdom of sports or politics or whatever you want to name? Or if people looked at my life, would they recognize the kingdom of God? See, and Paul says to live in this way, to do this so that you stand firm, united in one spirit and mind as you struggle together. Why? To remain faithful to the gospel.